Hey everybody, welcome back to the basement. Welcome back to the layout. We're going to be asking that one question that everyone's been wanting to know. How do you afford all these trains? It's a great question, and we're going to talk about it right here, right now. Let's go. All right, guys, it's not a secret that this is an expensive hobby to be in, especially O gauge. Even if you're looking at HO or N scale, it's still an expensive hobby to be in. And it's so easy for us, especially those of us that are in the online communities, to quickly fall into the trap of overbuying and finding ourselves in debt and financial ruin. And that's just going to lead to stress and no one wants to be there. It's just going to lead to health problems down the road and relationship problems. And so how do we prevent that? Well, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of maturity, takes a lot of patience. And I'm hoping that I can share some things with you today that are going to help you prevent yourself from falling into some of the pitfalls of being in a hobby that requires you to collect and buy things that are pretty expensive. And maybe if you're already in that situation, we can work on some ways to pull yourself out of it. So I hope you can settle in and enjoy this video with me and leave me a comment on your thoughts. What do you do? What are your strategies? If they differ from mine, what makes sense? What do you have more questions on that we can dive into in a future video? All right, so let's start out with the basics. We're in a hobby where we want to buy things. We need to build a layout. You want to have a collection, right? Well, typically when we begin this hobby, you start out with one train. Typically it's a gift. And then if your history is like me, every birthday and Christmas, you got one more piece of rolling stock and occasionally another engine. By the time I had gotten out of the hobby when I was in middle school, I had 3 engines. I had my steam engine that I had received when I was very, very young from my grandfather. I had a set of Williams Budd cars, and then I had a set of, it was a Lionel Amtrak. It was an Amtrak diesel set that I've actually featured on the channel before. That was it, and that was 10 years or so of collecting. That's all I had acquired. Now I had rolling stock as well. But now, as an adult, you start to earn more money, and then you spend some more money, and you are able to acquire some more things. Why we collect. When we buy things, whether it be something for your collection or a new sweatshirt that you like or anything, you get a hit of dopamine. Dopamine is a drug in the brain. That's a protein, I believe. I'm not a scientist, but it gives you that pleasure feeling. It hits your pleasure center. Feels good. Think about that when you purchase something new. You're at the hobby shop, you get something, it's just that excitement, right? Oh, this is awesome. It feels really good. Makes you happy. Eventually that dopamine wears off, and then what do you feel? It's called buyer's remorse, right? I'm sure we've all felt it. We're like, oh man, I really wish I didn't just spend $1,500 on this locomotive, right? That impulse buy, you didn't think about it, you didn't sleep on it, and now you're left with that buyer's remorse. You've just bought this thing that dopamine has worn off. That's a tough feeling to work through, but it's something that we've probably all felt. You have to be really, really disciplined. One of the things that I try to abide by is not doing that impulse buy anymore. There are the dogs. There, it's every day. Always an adventure here in the Montagna household. Give me a second. I have a collection that's grown a lot over the past few years. I've been very, very fortunate to be able to acquire the engines and the rolling stock that I have in my collection. Not only do we have to buy those, but you have to build a layout as well. Now, maybe you belong to a club, and that's helpful. You don't have to build a layout in your own house, your own basement. And if you don't have the space, you have the opportunity to go run your collection somewhere else. You still need to buy those items, and they're not cheap. So where do we start? Well, you can purchase things in different ways, right? I can walk into the hobby shop, my local hobby shop, and I can purchase something there. Power of the internet is I can just go online and order online as well. I can go into the store, window shop, and just impulse buy something right there. That is one of the key ways that we get ourselves into trouble in this hobby, is by walking into a store and impulse buying something. I'm guilty of it too. It's fun. It's fun to walk in somewhere, put some money down, and grab a new engine and bring it back right away. It's a lot more difficult to be patient and pre-order something. Now, within our hobby, we have the opportunity to do that. We can pre-order something if we're paying attention when MTH, Atlas, Lionel announces a new locomotive or piece of rolling stock that we want to buy. We can pre-order it, and then we have a couple months to get ready to pay that item off. we're still ordering something with no money down. Eventually that item's going to come in, we have to pay for it. And that's where you can get yourself in trouble if you have not saved money to pay that thing off. So there's a couple options that you have out there, and I'm going to get to the tricks that I've learned a little bit later. The other thing that we can do is buy secondhand. You can go onto trains.com, trains with a Z. You can buy some secondhand stuff from them. You could buy things on some of the online forums. Facebook Marketplace is a way, or you can go to shows and buy things that are secondhand. You can save some money that way as well. So that's another way of purchasing and acquiring some things, but saving some money. Now, there's also auctions. So you can go to online auction sites. Obviously, there's eBay, Cabin Fever, Stout. Sometimes you can get some things for a pretty good price at those auction sites, but then there's going to be some buyer premiums you're going to have to pay that's going to add on to that. But it's another way to find some things that maybe came out a long time ago that you're trying to acquire for your collection. Either way, you still have to pay. And this is the key that I learned as I got older, is that, there's a couple ways that you can pay. One, you can pay by cash, which is the best way to pay. You could use a debit card. That's still coming out of your account when you swipe it. That's the second best way. Or you can use a credit card. That's the worst way. Okay? There's scientific differences in how the brain reacts to swiping plastic, debit or credit card, versus paying cash. When you pay cash, that money no longer belongs to you, it's gone. When you swipe a debit card, that money is coming out of your account and your brain is still comprehending it the same way, but it's not quite the same effect as if you're just putting cash down on the table. The other benefit of cash is you're more likely to get a good deal. You can deal a lot better. People are more likely to give you a better deal if you can pay cash. Credit cards, swipe your credit card, that money just goes onto the balance of your credit card that you're borrowing from Chase or whatever bank backs that Visa card or MasterCard. Now, your brain doesn't have the same reaction to swiping a credit card as it does to paying cash or using your debit card, where that money's coming out of your account. You no longer have that money. You now have that new item. If I swipe my credit card and I buy, let's say, this Vision Line triplex, we'll say for the sake of argument here, it's $2,100. Well, if I just swipe my credit card, I now have this, and I still have $2,100 in my bank account. Now I have to pay that off of my credit card, but I can pay $100 off a month and get it to eventually go down. Now I'm paying interest on that, so every month that I'm rolling that balance over, I'm accruing interest. And now this $2,100 locomotive can quickly become a $2,500 locomotive or a $3,100 locomotive, depending on how long it takes me to pay off my credit card. Not a great plan. Now, try to get rid of the credit cards. That's been a big push here in our household, is to no longer have credit cards. We have been really, really fortunate to be able to work that out. JCPenney department store, for those of you that don't know, they were making more money off their credit card interest rates, the interest they were getting from their company credit card that customers had, than they were from selling things in their store. That's insane. But that just goes to show you how deep this country loves to be in debt with credit cards. And they try to make it worth your while. Oh, well, you can get airline miles and you can get these points and things like that. Trust me, most people aren't paying those balances off every month. And if you think you're any different than the majority of Americans, you're probably wrong. Don't use credit cards. Get rid of it. No more credit cards. Just use cash. Oh, Chris, well then how am I going to order something? Well, you can still do your pre-ordering. And in fact, pre-ordering is great because usually you get more of a discount. Dealers, a good MTH Lionel dealer, I like to use Train World, will offer discounts on a pre-order because they're locking in that sale. So, for instance, Atlas just had their latest catalog. I believe those pre-orders are due or have been due over the last week or so. I ordered some flat cars from Train World, right? So I put those orders in, and I'm telling Train World I'm buying those. So they're going to order those, and they know that it's already a sale, right? It's a pretty safe bet for them. Now, I could cancel my pre-order. That wouldn't be a really cool thing to do. If you're pre-ordering something, you're stating in a business agreement, a virtual digital handshake, I'm going to buy that item when it comes in. And when you cancel it, Train World doesn't get to cancel that order. So then they're stuck with that item. Now, will that item sell? Probably, eventually it will. But that messes up their books and their balance sheets. They order stock for their own inventory based on their metrics and their analytics and what they know of the market. So when I'm canceling something that's adding to their inventory, and they don't want to do that. So, if you cancel on pre-orders, it becomes a trend. They're not going to do business with you anymore. Now, I can't say that's a Train World thing. I'm not speaking for them, but I'm just saying as a local hobby shop, I would imagine that would be really difficult for them financially. And so, it's not a great business model for you to follow either. But pre-ordering does offer you some discounts. Lionel MTH will offer some bigger discounts when during their pre-order window. Atlas, not quite as much. If you look at Atlas pre-order prices, they're usually not the same percentage off MSRP that Lionel and MTH offer. But hey, it's saving you some money. If you know you're going to want that product, I would jump on that pre-order. Now, Chris, I can't pay cash on a pre-order. That's fair. You can't pay cash on a pre-order, but you can use your debit card, and so when that product comes in, that money comes out of your bank account. You have to be disciplined in these scenarios to have that money set aside. Best case scenario is if you're ordering something for $100, you already have that $100 in your account to pay it off. And so you can put that money aside, put it in your savings account, and then when that product comes in, transfer from your savings account to your checking account, and it's paid off. Not too tough. Some companies, I know Mr. Muffin's Trains, they do offer an opportunity to pay during the pre-order and the manufacturing window. So you place your pre-order, let's say in November, that product's going to come in May. You can pay over the next few months incremental amounts of money. Sometimes there's a charge on that though, so be careful and have it paid off. So for instance, I pre-ordered a bunch of Berwick boxcars from Mr. Muffin's Trains. Those have not arrived yet. They are already paid off. So when that pre-order comes in, I won't owe it a dime. I've already paid those off. I don't have to worry about that money sitting in my account. Some dealers don't offer a really simple way of paying off a pre-order before it comes in. That balance just sits there. They don't charge you anything when you make your pre-order. They're going to charge you the balance when that product comes into stock. So what do you do in those situations? Well, you can reach out to the hobby shop and see if you can place a deposit or money towards your order. You could do that incrementally every month or every couple months, depending on how far out you believe that manufacturing window is going to be. Another option is what I do, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Try not to do those impulse buys. Now that's tough. When I go to York, I came home with a set of passenger cars and a new engine. That was an impulse buy. But I did have a budget set of what I could spend if I wanted to spend money, and I didn't go over that budget. I had money with me. I didn't use a credit card. I paid it off right away. Done. Okay? So those are things you have to keep in mind as well. If you're walking to a hobby shop and you're willing to spend money, how much money are you willing to spend, and stick to it. Don't have credit cards with you. Remember, no more credit cards. Get rid of those things. That way you're only spending money that you have. As you get older, we've got responsibilities, right? I have a job, I have a career, I have a family, I have a house, I have bills that I have to pay. I'm probably not alone in that. I would gamble on saying most of you probably have bills that you're paying, unless you're still young and living at home with your parents. In which case, that's great. But where do you want to be in 5, 10, 15 years? Because buying $1,000 worth of trains at a 15, 16, 17, that's going to put you back from where you could be financially when you're 25, 30, 35. Doesn't take much to invest a little bit of money young and let that money grow in an IRA account or a mutual fund account. Let that money grow and multiply so you're set up for success and financial freedom down the road. I have lots of trains on the wall behind me that I purchased. If I would have invested the money instead of buying these trains in money market mutual fund account, I'd be set up for a lot more financial success in the future than I am right now. This is the reality that I have to live with. I enjoy my collection, right? Now, a lot of you know that I rotate my collection a lot too. That's another way that I can pay for trains. If I want to buy something and I don't have the money saved up for it, I sell some things. And when I sell them, then I have money in my account that I could then use to buy more trains. Or what I did a couple weeks ago, I took some money and I invested it instead of buying some more trains. I invested that for the future. Okay? But I've got things for sale all the time. This Alaska set behind me with the Superliner, that's for sale, right? I post those online and see if they'll sell. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they hang out for a while, and that's okay. It looks really nice on my wall, and I enjoy having it in my collection. But if it sells, it gives me some freedom to buy something else. I also make sure that I monitor what I'm buying. So I have a spreadsheet of my entire collection, how much money I've spent. I keep a track of how many things I've bought within the calendar year. It's probably not a surprise that I make a little bit of money off of YouTube. I don't make a lot. It's certainly not enough to pay for my bills that I have. And those bills come first. But it's a little bit of money that I can pad my account to help pay for some things that go back into the hobby. So when I buy things, I track that in a spreadsheet. When I pre-order items, I also have a spreadsheet so I know exactly how much money I have set for my pre-order. I know exactly what it is that I'm going to be, that's going to be coming out of my account or that I'm going to need to have saved up. And I know what's coming in and when, and I can monitor about when I expect those pre-orders to be coming in. Lionel updates their website a decent amount, so it makes it pretty easy to figure out when something's coming in. Atlas will send you their shipping schedule, or you can find it online, so you know when it's leaving the manufacturing plant, and then you can figure a couple months out from there is when it's going to get delivered. So there's some ways that you can go about monitoring this stuff, so it's not a surprise when all of a sudden you get a ding that Charles Rowe or Mr. Muffin hit you your card, that all of a sudden now you have to pay for something. Be in the know, and that way, another way that you're not then going out a week before a pre-order is coming in and spending $1,000 on a locomotive. Now I mentioned bills, right? Those things come first. So I've got a family. Family is going to come first before I'm buying things for my collection. But before all that, too, something to keep in mind is I have a house that I own, right? Now I'm making mortgage payments on that, but it's not like I'm spending all this money and I don't already own a car, which is paid off. I own a house, not paid off. I'm making my mortgage payments on that. And I've got 2 kids that one day probably going to have to go through college. So I got to save some money for them as well. Those things all have to come first before this. Sure, you can have passions, but there's other realities to life. And I don't want to be 65 without a retirement savings and still making house payments. My goal is to have this thing paid off in less than 15 years. So I'm going to do that first. That'll set me up for financial success later on. My income is my greatest wealth building tool, as Dave Ramsey says. And so my goal is to have that to be able to build wealth down the road. I need to get out of debt, and my home debt is part of that. So I can pay that home debt down first, then later on down the road, I'll be able to afford more of the things you see behind me. Many of us have heard the term keeping up with the Joneses. It's something that is easy to fall into. Keeping up with the Joneses, if you're unfamiliar with that term, is the idea that your neighbors, the Joneses, have all these nice, shiny new things. And so we try to buy fancy, shiny new things like the new car or, the fancy vacation to keep up with them, right? It's kind of like this social showing one-upsmanship, if you will. Online, this has become much more challenging and difficult for folks in their own mental health, because when your neighbors were the Joneses, you saw the shiny new car, but you also could hear the arguments. You can see their affect being, not always happy and joyful because of the realities of life. Online, you don't get to see that. You're only seeing the positives. You're only seeing happy people, happy-go-lucky, the best of the best. I can film something. I can stop it, pause it, delete it, edit it. I can take 100 photos of myself before it gets posted on Instagram. You're only seeing the polished persona that is getting put online. You're not seeing the reality of day in and day out. So keeping up the Joneses is so much more impossible because you're not seeing the whole thing. Just because you see someone online that's able to purchase some things doesn't mean that you have to do that. Right? Just because they're doing a certain thing doesn't mean that you have to do that. Be yourself, right? We all know people that have a huge, massive collections. It'd be great to be able to have that. It's not my reality right now. Maybe someday if I make smart financial decisions, I'll be able to get there in the future though. So remember to only focus on you. It's great to be entertained by folks with bigger collections and big layouts and things like that put together really great videos. That's awesome. I do the same thing. But don't try to emulate their life because it's not your life, right? Do what you can do to be happy, successful, and enjoy the hobby while also setting yourself up for success in the future. So I order my trains from Train World. That's usually where I order most of my trains from. Every once in a while, I'll order something from Mr. Muffin's trains and occasionally Nick Smith as well. But what I do for myself at Train World is I place my orders and it's a $0 down for the pre-order, which I don't technically like because I want to pay it off. So then what I do is I can buy myself a gift card. You can easily go online to Train World and buy a gift card and just send it to your own email. And then you go in and redeem that gift card and it goes into your gift card balance. And now I've got If I buy a $500 engine, I can buy a $500 gift card. It sits in my account under my account balance. And then when that engine comes in, it just pulls the money off of my gift card balance, and anything else would then come off of my debit card. So by doing that, it allows me to have paid that item off. Now there's still discipline there, because if I then go buy something from Train World's website, but before my pre-order comes in, it's going to pull it from that balance. So then I have to put more money back into my gift card balance. So there's still discipline involved there, but I'm spending money on that pre-order when I'm pre-ordering it, and that's going to help make things a little bit easier for me in the long run. So that's one of the strategies that I use when I do my pre-ordering. Now, I've got spreadsheets that I mentioned. I'm going to link those into the description below, that you can go ahead and make a copy of those Google Sheets if you would like, and make your own spreadsheets to help you out with your own budgeting so you can afford this hobby. As I mentioned, I don't just do this. I have a career. I also find other ways to make an income to help support this hobby, right? So I write for Classic Toy Trains. That helps pay for some of this hobby. It doesn't pay a lot, but it helps chip away and give me a little bit of spending money to help for pre-orders or some small things here or there for the layout, right? I also make a little bit of money on YouTube. I also sell things in my collection when I'm ready to rotate it out. So there's ways that you can be smart about this. When you're making money, you want to make sure first thing is that you're setting a budget. Where's money going to go? You've got to pay those bills first, and then whatever's left over, that after you've saved and given and all that kind of stuff, you then have money for your hobby. And that might only look like $50 a paycheck. It might be $25 a paycheck, but that's your reality, right? And that's okay, as long as you're being smart with your money. Because once you fall into that debt, and that credit card debt keeps piling up, it's going to be really hard to get out of. And then you're going to start panic selling things eventually. You're not going to get the money that it's worth because you're just trying to get rid of it to pay down your credit card debt. That's not a great way to live. First thing to do, pay off your credit cards, get rid of it, and then start making smart decisions when you're buying things for this hobby. Like I said, it's not cheap. I understand that. But when you want to do something, you want to do it right. And so don't fall into the trap of spending money you don't have. So I hope you found this video informative. I did a budgeting video a while ago, and my budgeting has changed just slightly as we've looked at rearranging how we do some finances here in our own household, and as I get older and start changing on how I'm approaching the hobby. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you found it informative and beneficial. Leave me a comment. What are your thoughts? What is something that you struggle with when it comes to this hobby? We've all been there. We're here to support one another. To help the hobby keep going, we need to make sure that we are being smart with what we're buying, so that way we can keep buying long into the future. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Chris from Chris's Strange and Things, and we will catch you on the next one.